3, 2, 1 so that I can.
3, 2, 1. We are ready.
Okay, a very good afternoon from Beijing and good morning from Pakistan. This is Zoon Ahmed Khan from CCG, and I welcome you all to the joint CCG IPRI webinar on strengthening business engagement under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Of course, this webinar is happening at a very timely juncture. We have seen a very impactful visit of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in China, where he visited Shenzhen, Beijing, and also Xi'an. And the focus of this visit has been on strengthening the phase 2 of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which essentially means attracting businesses and utilizing the investment, the so far $26 billion investment that has been successfully made in Pakistan. So this webinar is a joint effort to understand the impact, the successes, and addressing the challenges to make sure that we can have a more impactful China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So firstly, let me warmly welcome for our welcoming remarks. We will invite Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed, who is President of IPRI, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Ambassador Raza Mohammed has served in the Pakistan Army and had served on various command and staff assignments. He has also previously represented Pakistan as an ambassador to Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, and Comoros. And he has served as an advisor to the president of the National Defense University of Pakistan. So for context setting and welcoming remarks, we warmly welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zoon Khan. It's a great honor to be here joining you people on this webinar. I take this opportunity from Islamabad Policy Research Institute side to welcome you, Ms. Zoon, Mr. Wong, and Mr. Victor, the Vice President of the organization, and also the other speaker, Professor Dr. John Gong. I also take this opportunity to welcome our own team, that is Dr. Rashid, who is Director of Research, and Anil Suleiman and other people, and all those who have joined us in this webinar. Thank you so much for being here, and it is so good to start the things in time. I think the topic itself explains a lot, that we are going to discuss strengthening business engagement under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And as very aptly highlighted by Ms. Zoon Khan, that this is the most important time now. Our Prime Minister recently came back. He came back day before yesterday from China after a 5-6 days visit in which he visited various places, met the leadership of China, President Xi, and also the Prime Minister, and multiple business entities. I think China-Pakistan Economic Corridor has been kind of rejuvenated, and they call it now a new phase in which they have decided to cooperate on multiple things. I'll not go into the details, you must have read it, but about 32 MOUs have been signed, and 3 agreements have been signed to enhance the cooperation and speed up the work, which is to be undertaken by the projects of the CPEC. Unfortunately, because of the COVID and certain other things, and I would not hesitate to accept, because of our internal political issues, some impact was made on the CPEC, which will be mitigated, inshallah, now. When it comes to China-Pakistan relations, I don't have to go into repeating the things. Only this much suffices, that we have been all-weather friends. Good or bad, any pressures which comes from abroad or inside, both the leaderships, both the people have stayed together like one. And it started when we did not know each other's language even. So the history goes back, and more credit goes to China as a greater power, that China has stood by us despite all the odds. And recently, the President Xi and Prime Minister of Pakistan's meeting and the joint communique, which was issued after that, it indicates the commitment of both the countries and the leadership. What has impacted us is the global milieu, actually. The topic will be discussed in more detail by Director Rashid, Director of the Research, He will be giving more detailed expose on the impact of global rivalry on the BRI and CPEC. But more importantly, this global rivalry is going to stay. It's not going to end. However, there appears to be some re-engagement after the meeting of President Xi and the Biden and other people and the ministerial level in the Shangri-La dialogue. It indicates that there is some realization that too much of Cold War or heightening of the Cold War or trumpeting the bugles of war would not be beneficial for both the countries. However, my last point, however, we must expect this criticism, opposition for the Belt and Road Initiative and CPEC to continue. It actually hurt so many people in a way, so many countries in a way that they do not like China to become a power which has displayed its engagement on a win-win cooperation through economical engagement, through trade and connectivity, and not wars and military actions. So there are countries which are against it, and they see China as a challenger to replace them, whereas China is not at all looking towards that direction. I remember that the Chinese leadership thinks that in 2050, China will be a country of some reckoning, not even a regional power. But BRI will draw criticism and CPEC will continue to be targeted physically as well. We have to brace up for it. We don't have to be deterred. We have to gel together, stand together, and take it forward. Thank you so much, Ms. Zoon, and thank you so much, friends. Very grateful.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed. That was President, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. And really, no country or no bilateral cooperation can operate in a vacuum. And to understand the global dynamics is important to be able to address the challenges we share and to make the most of opportunities we have. Now, without further ado, let's warmly welcome Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, Mr. Victor Gao. And Mr. Victor Gao is obviously a very known international voice in understanding China's perspective. He is also not only Vice President of CCG, but has many other positions, including Chairman-elect of the National Organization Committee of the International Gas Union, the WGC 2024, which is World Gas Conferences. He is Vice Chairman of China Beidou Industrial Promotion Organization, Chairman of Ober Group, Hong Kong. And he also holds a JD from Yale Law School and a master's in international relations from the University Political Science Department of Yale Graduate School. He has also formerly been the interpreter for President Deng Xiaoping. So we warmly welcome Mr. Victor Gao for your welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Zoon. It's a great pleasure. It's a great honor for me to attend this important webinar, especially because the Excellency Prime Minister of Pakistan just wrapped up his official visit to China. I think it is a very important occasion for us to really think again about the all dimensions of China-Pakistani relations. First of all, allow me to emphasize that the world we are living in is undergoing tremendous amount and very fast transformation and changes. We are talking now more and more about war and peace. So we need to really take a position on this. We need to oppose war of all kinds and embrace peace of all kinds. And whenever there is a war elsewhere, for example, we need to do our best to call on all parties to achieve ceasefire rather than prolonging the war. Now, the other thing is the great, profound technological transformation, which eventually will impact on all mankind as a whole, especially when you talk about this AI revolution will really be a game changer. And it may not only accelerate arms peace and war efforts, for example, because there is a tendency that certain countries want to weaponize AI and use AI as an important instrument in, for example, war and peace initiatives. But eventually, I think we all need to realize that the uncontrolled fast accelerating revolution involving AI may eventually create a situation where Homo sapien as a whole, and we are all part of the Homo sapien mankind species, may eventually be dictated or even be subjugated to the runaway AI. When and whether that will happen, no one knows for sure, but we need to prepare for that possibility, and mankind as a whole need to decide what exactly we can do. So when we talk about China-Pakistani relations, we also need to think about these overarching changes that are taking place in the world. And China and Pakistan need to do something like committing to sharing all the science and technological breakthroughs that we can come up with between our two brotherly and sisterly countries. And in this context, I'm very delighted to see that the Chinese Chang'e 6 lunar probe actually carried experiment proposed by the Pakistani side. So the experiment also touched down the farther side of the moon and is on its way back to Earth. And I hope we will have more such cutting-edge technological cooperation between China and Pakistan, and we will view such breakthroughs as part of the CPEC, because CPEC is not only a major project, unprecedented almost in scale in terms of connectivity of all kinds, but also space connectivity, cyber connectivity, and eventually financial connectivity of all kinds. And hopefully the Chinese people and the Pakistani people will also have more and much more rapid exchanges between our two great nations going forward. Now, allow me to emphasize several points, mostly as my impressions. I think based on Chinese experience over the past 45 or 46 years, we actually have some recipe for development. One is always maintain stability at home at all cost. And I hope our Pakistani brothers and sisters would also do the same, maintain stability at home, which is crucially important. Second point, keeping peace abroad. Keeping peace doesn't mean that China will be in a position to dictate peace to other countries. No, keeping peace means China wants to do its utmost to avoid being involved in the war. And whenever there are problems between countries, China wants to use diplomacy, negotiation to solve the problems rather than resorting to war, as several other countries have that instinct to do. Now, the other thing, crucially important, and this is absolutely relevant to the CPEC, that is, development is the hard truth. Because if we do not develop, then we not only lose out on the opportunities, and other countries will develop ahead of you and move ahead of you. And then once you miss, for example, several years, then you may actually miss the whole cycle. You may know for sure, 45 years ago, the size of the Chinese GDP and the Indian GDP were more or less on a par with each other. But today, the size of the Chinese GDP is about 5 times as large as the Indian GDP. While India is talking a lot about becoming a very important economy, etc., from the Chinese perspective, with the benefit of 45 years of rapid economic growth, we think that all countries, including China, Pakistan, India, for example, need to figure out a very special, tailor-made strategy to promote economic development. Now, the fourth point, allow me to wrap up very quickly. In China, we have a saying, and I think this is real truth, and I hope our Pakistani friends will also believe in this. That is, to develop, to make riches, for example, you need to build a road. And this is exactly what the Serbian and the Hungarians are doing. They are building the fast speed train with the Chinese help. And President Vučić said, and he repeated this truth from China, to achieve wealth and riches, you build a road. So I think the CPEC is mostly a connectivity project. It is the right thing to do. And allow me to share one point before I wrap up. The CPEC is the largest and the most capital-intensive, technological-intensive projects among all the BRI projects in the world. That means you never have any other important BRI projects, for example, the high-speed railway in Indonesia from Bandung to Jakarta, and the railway project in Laos, for example, quite a few railways and highway projects, dams of all kinds, power stations in different parts of China that China is working with other countries. But CPEC is the largest scale projects. And I do hope the Pakistani friends will appreciate that, because this investment is not for today, is not for the past 10 years. It will be for the coming 50 years and 100 years. And this will really revolutionize the way to do business, the way to conduct people-to-people exchanges. And going forward, we really need to figure out a way to build upon the CPEC, to add more flesh and blood, if I may say so, to the parameters of the CPEC, and also to make sure that the connectivity is just not for the purpose of connectivity. The connectivity is a means to achieve an end. And what is the end? The end is to uplift people in China and in Pakistan from poverty. China has already declared the elimination of abject poverty, of course, as of 2020. And in Pakistan, I think we also need to help the Pakistani people to achieve that. And also, I think, to promote people-to-people exchanges. There are many things that China and Pakistan can do. And I also mentioned another concept before, that is China-Pakistan Plus. That is, Pakistan is not only Pakistan, Pakistan is a proud member of the Muslim world and the Islamic world in the world. And we can really leverage off on that. That is the CPEC, not only for China and Pakistan, but all the Middle Eastern countries, the Muslim world, etc. And Pakistan, I believe, can play a very important role in telling the real story about China, the truths about China, not only to its own people, but to the Islamic world. And I think if we look at the situation in Gaza, allow me to finish by saying a real friend of the Islamic world will need to defend the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. And this should be the litmus test. And I hope the Pakistani people will realize that China is a real friend of the Islamic world and the Muslim people at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Victor Gao. Really, I mean, you've touched upon some of the most important aspects of understanding why CPEC matters. And I think especially when you talk about artificial intelligence, I'll maybe mention 2-3 key aspects which will lead to our panel discussion, where we have experts from both CCG and IPRI. That there are collective challenges. And at CCG also, we focus on global governance. And we need to, as China and Pakistan and as the global community, recognize that the real challenges we face are collective and how we can strengthen global governance in order to address them. And another aspect was about China's development being an example. This is also mentioned in the joint statement that was issued by both sides on 8th June, where China's example, China's development model, opening new paths, new perspectives, new ways to modernize and to improve economies for developing countries has particularly been mentioned. So there's a lot obviously to cover. And as you mentioned, P2P, people to people, the business to business and people to people will be the inertia of this cooperation. So I think as we move now to the panel discussion, where we are precisely going to discuss how to strengthen the business engagement, we will also emphasize that the business to business dimension, the people to people connectivity, which has been a core focus of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit as well, as he took 100 businesses with him, as now the focus is on attracting interest in Pakistan's economy to bring energy into the infrastructure currently that has been completed. This will require us to understand each other on a deeper level and to realize that the dynamism of this relationship is between the people on both sides. And in the end, obviously, the bridges, ports, pipelines have been about improving the socio-economic reality of Pakistani people. So how do we go to that point is something that now our distinguished panel will discuss further. So let me firstly welcome our first speaker, for this panel, who is going to talk about impact of the geostrategic situation, in particular the US-China competition on the BRI. We have Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, who is Director Research at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. He's going to discuss how the global dynamic, which is also briefly touched upon by both our president from IPRI and vice president from CCG, how that is impacting the Belt and Road Initiative and CPEC. So for all of our panelists, up to 10 to 15 minutes, and this will be followed by a Q&A session. So for all of you viewing, please feel free to ask your questions as you watch the panel. So now we warmly welcome Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua for his intervention.
Thank you very much, Zoon, and I express my gratitude to CCG, especially the President CCG, Mr. Victor, for having afforded me this opportunity to speak on this very important subject. Mr. Victor alluded to the importance of B2B and the security in fostering the linkages and connectivity. So when people talk of these corridors, we in Pakistan are actually living that reality. So this business engagement in the shape of CPEC is a living embodiment of societal emancipation and development for us. And we see that out of energy projects, 21 projects were started, 14 have been completed, and 7 are in the closing stages of completion. And nearly 600 kilometers of highways and a transmission HVDC line. Then what we are very expecting, that is ML1 project. So these all are the realities unfolding right in front of us, and we are very keen to provide a secure environment to ensure that stability and security takes us to our destined goal. Topic assigned to me was impact of global competition on BRI. So I would give a structured discourse and would be happy to take any questions thereafter. The present age of global competition between a dominant global power USA and an emerging global power China is characterized by intense geopolitical competition. The bipolar world ended after dissolution of Soviet Union in 91, and the unipolarity continued till late 2000s when Obama took over the US presidency and tacitly accepted the rise of China as the leading superpower. The USA-China relations, however, took a different turn under Trump when Graham Allison's Thucydides trap became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The national security strategy given by Donald Trump in 2017 elevated the competition with China as the #1 national security threat for USA, identifying regions such as Indo-Pacific that we now call Asia-Pacific, which touches from Indian West Coast to the western shores of USA, where USA desires to contain the rising Chinese influence. The Trump administration resorted to a competitive paradigm instead of cooperative engagement that was manifested in USA's pulling out of Trans-Pacific Partnership in January 2017. So let me show you a few slides so that we get a little focused. Okay, can you see that? All right, so if we can see that, we can move. The Chinese-led regional comprehensive economic partnership is the largest free trade agreement of the world by GDP, and a stark reminder of the integrative potential of the economic partnerships as against the divisive potential of the security alliances. the BRI, it doesn't go forward. Next. The BRI comprises around 2,600 projects in over 100 countries worth 3.7 trillion, linking China with Eurasia, West Asia, and Europe. Can you see the second slide? Yeah. West Asia and Europe. The
Yes.
belt is the land-based infrastructure, while road is the maritime route containing ports and harbors linking important maritime routes in Indian Ocean, Mediterranean, Persian Gulf, and the South China Sea. The 5 pillars of BRI are policy coordination, connectivity, unimpeded trade, financial cooperation, and people-to-people bonds. Originally planned to link China with East Asia and Europe, the BRI has expanded to include Oceania, Latin America, and Africa, including 147 countries, accounting for 2/3 of the world population and 40% of world's GDP. Some 152 countries have accepted Chinese investments to be part of BRI. According to Western scholars, the BRI is a Chinese pushback to USA's pivot to Asia and comprises infrastructural, energy, and industrial projects such as special economic zones. The concept espouses trade, connectivity, and sustainable economic partnerships in line with President Xi Jinping's visionary approach of Global Security Initiative and Global Development Initiative. The Global Security Initiative seeks to improve security of all countries, both in traditional as well as non-traditional security domains, through elimination of root causes of the conflict, binding all nations in mutually beneficial economic relations. The elimination of regional disputes and strengthening of regional organizations like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia, and China plus Central Asia Forum is one of the important elements of GSI. Now, having failed to compete with China on economic front, the USA-led Western Bloc is trying to create alternative groupings like CPTPP, but USA has refused to join it. Instead, USA is creating groups like Build Back, Better World, and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework to act as a countervailing economic force to China. While China is financing a global economic initiative like BRI that seeks to economically empower the developing countries, the USA and its allies are trying to cobble together security-centered alliances in Indo-Pacific region to contain the Chinese expansion in the region. These alliances include Quad, AUKUS, I2, U2, and IPEF. A cursory look at above alliances indicates the fact that these alliances have been established to act as a bulwark to 6 sub-components of BRI, which are the new Eurasia Land Bridge Economic Corridor, the China-Mongolia-Russia Economic Corridor, China-Central Asia, West Asia Economic Corridor, China-Indonesia Peninsula Economic Corridor, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Bangladesh-China-India-Myanmar Corridor. Now, if we view the geographical position of Quad, we see that there are alliances which are giving acting as a bulwark to the 6 components of BRI. It becomes evident that these the putative bulwarks to 6 strands of BRI, albeit quite unsuccessfully. The Indo-Pacific strategy is a reincarnation of US geopolitical pivot towards Asia to counter China's rising economic cloud, and its earlier variants like rebalancing strategy and Trans-Pacific Partnership had completely failed to gain the requisite momentum due to US focus on other conflicts. The Indo-Pacific strategy, therefore, was a containment strategy which was unveiled by USA and its allies to contain China, with the Quad and AUKUS being their operational arms. Since China was making rapid inroads in Asia-Pacific region due to its economic muscle and connectivity initiatives like BRI and RCEP, a bulwark to contain its implacable march was deemed necessary. The manifestation of the Indo-Pacific strategy is being seen in the form of quadrilateral security dialogue alliances between US, Australia, India, Japan, and the military alliances like AUKUS, which includes Australia, UK, and the US. And now there is an Indo-Pacific economic framework, which was formed ostensibly to challenge China within the Asia-Pacific region. One thing evident from such arrangements is that the USA, in its pursuit of checkmating China, is shifting focus from land to sea. Now, after Quad, we also see a new alliance, that is Quad, which includes now Philippines also. So it's an ever increasing countervailing pushback against economic connectivity initiative, which is a win-win formulation for the entire world. But these alliances are not structured like typical multilateral organizations and do not provide for collective defense. Nonetheless, the conduct of the joint military exercises like Malabar appear to show unity and diplomatic cohesion. And similarly, India in this region has joined hands with the United States, Israel, and the UAE in an arrangement known as Quad of the West Asia, or the Middle Eastern Quad, which is called Middle Eastern I2U2. It was formed in October 2021 when the foreign ministers of India, Israel, and the UAE, along with the US representatives, met virtually and decided to create a joint working group on maritime security, infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and transport issues. It is noteworthy that the USA has appreciated India's role in the Middle Eastern Quad during a 2+2 meeting between the US and India in Washington. Now, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is a 13-member consortium proposed by the United States during President Biden's visit to Japan for the Quad leaders meeting in May 2022. It was aimed at investing in digital economy, secure and resilient supply chain, clean energy, infrastructure, transparency, and anti-corruption. But like other initiatives, nebulous initiatives like de-risking, it has also foundered on the rocks of expediency, as nothing concrete has come out of it as yet. The global power competition threatens to negatively impact regional economic integration and resolution of long-standing disputes between the major powers of South Asia. See, we are particularly concerned here about the regional security and connectivity. Politically, Quad affords India a clout in attainment of its hegemonic designs vis-a-vis smaller neighbors, and also burnishes its credentials for attainment of nuclear supplier groups membership to boost its stature at the global level. The biggest implication, however, for South Asia and Pakistan is the negative fallout of geopolitical competition, which is resulting in instability, and the fallout includes the hardening of Indian stance vis-a-vis small neighbors on unresolved disputes in the region, and opposition to economic connectivity initiatives like BRI, CPEC, TAPI, Gwadar Port, and Trans-Afghan Railways Corridor, which links Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Another implication is a shift of USA's geopolitical focus from Afghanistan to East Asia and Asia Pacific, leaving Afghanistan's mainstreaming and development to the region. It is a classic clash of two competing approaches for regional domination. One, China using geoeconomics as its leading strategy, while the United States relies on geopolitics of competition. A major trade war started between China and USA in 2009, 18-19. That resulted in a bilateral trade tariff of $450 billion US with China, following strictly the WTO rules, while the trade war impacted 18% of USA's imports, which was 2.6% of its GDP, and 11% of Chinese imports, that is 3.6% of its GDP. The consumers in China and USA paid very high price due to the trade war. The bystander countries like Malaysia, Mexico, Vietnam, Thailand, and Korea experienced a boost in their exports. Contrarily, countries like Israel, Ukraine, Egypt, and Colombia experienced decline in their exports. So USA is wary of China as BRI promises to increase global GDP by 7.1 trillion US dollars by 2040 and reduce trade costs by 2.2% globally. Because China has the largest e-commerce market in the world, the data acquired from the digital marketplace provides a strong backbone for fintech expansion into other countries. The USA is fearful of its global domination. The USA and allies are fearful of this potential and cite unfair advantage to Chinese state-owned firms and contractors, besides resenting Chinese technical standards and rapid strides in artificial intelligence and quantum computing. USA is also fearful of Chinese banking initiatives like AIIB and NDB, stoking unfounded fears of de-dollarization of global economy. The USA-China rivalry is preventing a joint effort for resolution of the Afghanistan issue, with attention diverted to needless confrontation in Asia-Pacific region. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is a flagship project of BRI, but due to this competition, the project is facing opposition from India and USA. The former US Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia and Central Asia, Alice Wells' statement about lack of transparency and dangers of unsustainable debt burden on Pakistan due to CPEC is indicative of that concern, forgetting that what this integrative and development potential means for Pakistan's development. USA is following the containment policy against China and therefore opposes CPEC in collusion with India by employing proxy warfare and supporting Baloch ethno-nationalist insurrection and Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan's terrorist activities, which are primarily aimed at destabilizing the state, and they also target CPEC. India is also trying to scuttle China-Myanmar economic corridor by discouraging countries like Myanmar and Bangladesh to be part of BRI.
So, Dr.
India
Rashid,
refused.
hi, Doctor. I'll request you if we can just start wrapping up.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up.
We have a bit over 15 minutes, and our speakers may not be able to stay past the allocated time. I received your message. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to just say at the end that President Xi Jinping's concept of GSI, GDI, and Global Civilizations Initiative acts as an attractive proposition for the Global South that feels marginalized due to the domination of Western development and security models. More than 70 countries have joined Friends of GDI, whereas GSI's success is visible in the shape of Saudi Arabia-Iran rapprochement. BRI, in fact, is a great enabler of GDI and GSI and would therefore be opposed tooth and nail by the Western alliances led by USA, which is expected, but we should not get dismayed and continue with our cooperation. The desired approach for China and its allies should be to counter the containment-oriented alliances and the trade wars through vigorous implementation of BRI projects that enhance connectivity and trade, whose visible advantages would eclipse all containment attempts. So I stop here and be happy to join.
Thank you. We'll have a Q&A session as well. We'll have later time for second interventions. So that was, a good overview of the global scenario and China's partnership and pragmatic global outreach versus a more strategic posture assumed by the US. I will also quickly add that at CCG, we really focus on, like you mentioned a few, Graham Allison and a few leading global scholars, we've hosted them for dialogues, and we try to play a role in understanding how these differences can be better bridged or better made sense of and have less of an impact on the manifestation of BRI and practical cooperation. So now our second speaker is Mr. Wang Saixia, who is Associate Professor, Beijing International Studies University. He's also non-resident fellow of CCG. So Wang Saixia will talk about China's vision for the Belt and Road Initiative and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And I will request up to 15 minutes, between 10 to 15 minutes is ideal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation from the CCG, and it's my honor and pleasure to meet new friends from Pakistani side. And today's topic will touch upon the future, or we can call the Chinese vision for the CPEC. Before I come to that, I have to because I know the audience possibly are not very possibly do not have the overview of the BRI. So I'll start from the overview of BRI and talk about the vision of the BRI. Then I'll go to the CPEC. So for the BRI, in the autumn of 2013, the Chinese side proposed the initiatives. It's called, the whole name is Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. By 2023, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the launch of the BRI, and till today, it marks the 12 years since the inception of these two initiatives. So till now, China has signed over 230 cooperation documents with more than 150 countries and 30 international organizations, covering over 80% of the countries that have established diplomatic relations with China. So these initiatives connect the majority of the ancient civilizations spanning across around the globe, as well as major international organizations such as the United Nations, Asian, and African Union. Among these countries and regions of the Global South are the focus. And the Global South has become the main participants in the joint construction of the BRI. And the United Nations development agencies recognize the BRI as a part of 21st century South cooperation in 2017. So since the proposal of BRI, it has driven the statistic is nearly $1 trillion in investment globally. So it formed over 3,000 cooperation projects and help the number of people out of poverty is 40 million. It helped 40 million people out of poverty. So the joint construction of the Belt and Road has opened up new spaces for the global development. With the basic framework of we call it from the Chinese side, we call it 6 corridors, 6 routes, and multiple countries and multiple ports. This includes the CPEC within this term. So it relies on the railways, highways, airports, ports, and the pipeline networks, and the construction of a multi-level and a composite infrastructure network. It advances ahead. So the global interconnection network covering the land, sea, air, and the internet is accelerating its formation, effectively promoting the large-scale circulation of goods, capital, technology, and personnel among countries, not only within the participating two countries, but among all the participating countries. It injects momentum into the global development. So on so I would like to focus on different continents because our Pakistani friends know a lot about the Asian part. So today I'll talk about the European part. In Europe, the Chinese side and the European side built the China Railway Express to Europe. It reaches 217 cities in 25 European countries, with a cumulative total of 78,000 trains over past 10 years. It transports 7.4 million TEUs of cargo, or its worth is over 300 billion US dollars. It creates a new mode of transportation across continents, long distance and large volumes, and in all weather and green and low carbon. And another great project is undergoing is the Hungarian and the Serbian railway. So it starts in the north from the Budapest and the capital of Hungary, and extends to the south of Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. The total length of the railway is 340 kilometers. It's a flagship project of the cooperation between China and Central and Eastern Europe. So this section within Serbia, a part of it is already finished. So we are working on another part. And last year, I think the Chinese high-speed trains was exported to Serbia, and it began its operation. So it's it's a breakthrough that Europe is using the Chinese high-speed railway. So there are also some other great projects going on in Europe. So in Africa, I'll talk a little bit about this. And under the recent adverse conditions of global trade protectionism, China and Africa reached steady improvements in both the quantity and quality of trade. The volume of goods trade increased from 210.2 billion US dollars in 2013 to 282 billion US dollars in 2022. So China right now maintains its position as Africa's largest trading partner. The value of service trade has steadily increased, and China highly values the alignment with Africans' development needs while maintaining traditional areas of advantageous cooperation, exploring and building new economic integration points. Promoting, right now we are working with Africa in developing their digital economy, ecological and environmental protection projects, and the new energy industries from scratches. A lot of the projects start from scratches. So about Asia, I would not elaborate because both sides know about the building of the AIIB and the other great projects include the CPEC. So when we talk about the future of the BRI, we could not overlook that document. I don't know whether our Pakistani friends have paid attention to. So it's a BRI paperwork document. It's called a Vision and Action for the Development Outlook of the Next 10 Years of Jointly Building the BRI. So I'll just gather some key points of the document, and if you read it through, it's a little bit thick, and it has some points, and with these points you can have a idea of how the BRI will go, where BRI is going. So there are three upholds, it's called. It's upholding the extensive consultation, joint construction, and shared benefits. It's this is first uphold. The second one is upholding the openness, green development, and integrity. And the third one is upholding the important guiding principles of high standard and people's livelihood and sustainability. In terms of the development goals, it focuses on 5 goals. So with these 5 goals, is the first is the interconnectivity network. It becomes the more smooth and efficient. Second, the goal is the practical cooperation in various fields will reach a new level. Third one is the sense of gain and happiness of the people in the co-building countries is further enhanced. So we have to pay attention to this point. This for the Pakistani friends, this means for the gain and the happiness of the Pakistani people. So in Pakistan. So this is the fourth point. So third point. The fourth one is a new system of Chinese open economy at a higher level will be basically formed. And the fifth goal is the concept of a community with a shared future for mankind, increasingly takes roots in our people's heart. So in terms of key areas, in the future, the BRI focus on 6 aspects. The first one is the policies communication between the two countries. The second one is still the old one, infrastructure connectivity. Next one is unimpeded trade. This just touches the points that our last speaker just mentioned. The next one is the financial integration. Next one is the people-to-people bonds, and then is the cooperation in new areas such as health, green development, digital, and innovation. So, in our Asian region, regarding the connectivity of infrastructure on the Euro-Asian continent, it is expected to cooperatively build a new Euro-Asian logistics passage supported by direct road transportation and participate in the construction of the Trans-Caspian International Transport Corridor. In addition, this includes deepening cooperation in areas such as green infrastructure, green energy, green transportation, green finance, implementing the BRI scientific and technological innovation action plan, and promotes the cooperation in artificial intelligence in the future. So just these are the direction that our BRI is moving. And when we look at the results of the already the finished part of the BRI and the CPEC and the future plan of the CPEC, we will see some of the points are just from the future of BRI. For example, right now we are strengthening the green energy in the Pakistani projects, and also the green transportation, the green finance. So my second part will focus on this green side, because I think it's one of the future of the CPEC. So it's the CPEC is really a very significant landmark project of the BRI initiative. So for its strategic meaning, I would not elaborate here, because all our friends here know about its geopolitical position, and its core. I think the core objective is to promote the construction of railways, highways, and energy infrastructure and ports. So I just look at some of the statistics over the past 10 years. Since the launch of the CPEC, it has brought a cumulative direct investment of over 25.4 billion US dollars, creating 236,000 jobs, and it built 510 kilometers of expressways, over 8,000 MW of electricity, and 886 kilometers of core power transmission network to Pakistan. So it effectively drive the economic and social development of Pakistan, and delivers these tangible results for the people of not only the Pakistani people, but also Chinese people. So for Pakistani side, I think it's expected, I don't know whether the number is correct. It's expected that between 2015 and 2030, the CPEC will increase Pakistani's economic growth rate by 2 to 2.5% annually, and creates direct and indirect job opportunities. So it's really a very transformative initiative of great significance to not only the Pakistani people, but also to the Chinese side. So The content of the CPEC, it covers a very
We have about
large.
1 to 2 more minutes, if that's okay, Mr. Wang. You can
Okay.
just.
Just I want to focus more on the just some example of the green energy
please, go ahead.
we are going. So in the early stages of our cooperation in Pakistan, it's we develop a lot of the coal drive power plants. So in the future, just I mentioned the transformation and the future vision of the BRI. So the Chinese side is turning more and more in building green projects in Pakistan. So it's this I think the transformation just not is not only coinciding with the transition the change of the BRI itself. It also responds to the needs of the Pakistani government and its people in going greener, right? So the transformation of the energy development cooperation in the China-Pakistan, the CPEC, it focuses on renewable energy. It will promote the technological progress in Pakistan. So I know that there is a very good example of this. It's called the China South Asia Technology Transfer Center. There is a sub-center in Pakistan. So it's one of the very successful modes. With this transfer of the technology, the Pakistani side just gained a lot of knowledge about how to operate this kind of green energy. And Chinese companies are promoting the distributed energy into the Pakistani market. Will also promote the going globe of the Chinese college technology, and the relevant of green technologies of these systems have achieved some significant. We call it the technology self-growth in Pakistan, because the Pakistani side will learn from the Chinese partner how these operates and will gain part of the technology, and then it can grow itself, the green energy.
Okay.
And
I think we may have to wrap it up here. We'll have time for Q&A. If there's any one single point you want to make very quickly, because we have 2 more speakers and it's already been above time. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, because the CPEC is too comprehensive. So today I could not cover all the aspects of it. I think I just wanted to focus on the green energy cooperation. And I think this is the area where the local community, the business communities, and the people-to-people changes, and also the exchanges of technologies would happen and should happen, where the sector that we should all the business sectors pay more attention to in the near future. Okay,
great.
thank you.
Thank you so much. I think actually we have a very ideal flow so far. Maybe we also planned that, obviously Dr. Rashid Wali talked about so far, what has been the evolution and the challenges. And with Mr. Wang Saisha, we can understand really from a Chinese perspective. And I think it's very important. I'll quickly add that you compare how BRI has evolved in Europe and how it has evolved in the African continent, and what kind of direction, those examples, those applications of the BRI can guide for CPEC. So the direction that you mentioned is also quite visible in the priorities of the current visit of the just recently wrapped up visit of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Technology transfer is important, green energy is important, technical vocational education is important, and mobilizing interests of Chinese investors is also critical. So we now move from the past, the vision, to our next speaker, who will talk about what is the China-Pakistan economic diplomacy as it stands today. So really, taking from Mr. Wang's intervention next, where do we stand today? How can this vision really be materialized? And perhaps a little bit about what has been achieved in this visit. In 9 years now since the phase 1 started, how has this particular visit boosted our chances of strengthening business engagement under CPEC? So for this, let's warmly welcome Dr. Anil Salman, who is Chair Economic Security at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Zoon. And I must say, excellent observations by Professor Wang when we talk about the business opportunities with reference to Pakistan. But I'll just kick off with reference to the economic diplomacy between the two countries. And when we look at Pakistan and China, and through the lens of economic diplomacy, I would say that economic diplomacy is as old as the diplomacy. And Silk Route pronounced a reward impulse for interstate contacts and contracts. And when we look at the BRI stirred up the passions globally. And if you look at the philosophy behind it, I think it's an altruism. No country left behind. And it's not just one specific country. China initiated the global initiatives like GDI, GSI, and GCI. Now, it rose a lot of controversies also when we look at the West. And I will just highlight before I going into the detail that how the economic diplomacy has been working. There were three major controversies that, well, whatever China is doing, it's the West looked at as it seems to be a debt trap. Then there are geopolitical strings attached to it, and there is lack of transparency. Like if you look at the articles and the research published from the West, they have been highlighting these things. But with CPEC in 2013, it made China as the new center of gravity. It gave them competition. And when we look at what West has been doing in comparison to it, they initiated this B3W, Build Back Better World. Then the Clean Green Initiative. And it was a competition between the East and the West. EU came up with this connectivity, connecting Europe global strategy towards it. Now, when I look at the South Asian region, there are a lot of similarities in terms of language, politics, economy, culture, administration, and legal procedures. But the beauty of China's diplomacy is that it has a customized economic diplomacy when we look at South Asia. For example, when we look at India, India is the largest recipient of Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank for the climate loans. Then there is a social and cultural engagement. There are a lot of scholarships for the Indian students. For Sri Lanka, Habintota, educational and cultural exchange, and it is the largest military supplier to Sri Lanka, and the Padma, which is the largest bridge, and China has its interventions in it. When you look at Nepal, China acted as a big brother, and it has asked to use its 4 major ports. For Afghanistan, through BRI, it is making the investment through the proposal of constructing the railway to the Kandahar. And for Maldives, yes, tourism being it's one of the primary thing. There are a lot of every year Chinese groups that are going into Maldives in terms of the tourism. Coming on to Pakistan, I think one of the biggest example between the two countries is that over the past few years, the total trade, what China and Pakistan have been doing, it's amount to 18 billion US dollars. And we have this project of CPEC, which is a translation that it's not a transaction. It's more of an infrastructural development. It's more of a brotherhood. And what we saw after 2019 in COVID, the vaccination drive and how China helped Pakistan with reference to COVID-19. Every year, there are lots of students that are going to China, getting their degrees and coming back. So there's betterment and sophistication in the human capital of Pakistan. Now, when we look at how Pakistan and China has progressed in the last 15 years, So there has been an investment of 62 billion US dollars so far. And what I say that China has not just maxed, but mastered the skill of economic diplomacy. And what we have seen that with Pakistan, now it's not just the first free trade agreement, we are in the second phase of free trade agreement, and that is actually translating huge economic benefits into. But there are certain challenges also when we look at the present state, and it's not just China. Overall, there has been an economic slowdown, but the way China perfected its economic strategy after COVID, that is remarkable. And I'll mention two things. Number one, it actually talked about the dual economic strategy. And the dual economic strategy is that after COVID, what they realized, it's not just the reliance on the external world, but also to improve the economic transactions, the domestic industry in such a way. So if there are any exogenous shocks, the economy has that kind of resilience that it can actually work on its own. So they called it as they initiated the dual economic strategy. The second one, what we see that there is, whenever we are looking at the growth of any economy, we take one of the parameters as the economic growth rates. And growth rates are deceptive. Countries target a very high growth rate. But what we miss is basically is the quality of the growth. And China itself, instead of targeting a high economic growth rate, they targeted a mediocre growth rate, which actually pronounced as we are not talking about the quantity of the growth rate, but we are actually talking about the quality of the growth. And by quality of the growth, as Professor Wong was mentioning, that going towards the renewables, talking about the climate, looking at the health systems, then looking at the infrastructure. So that is basically not targeting high growth rates, and what we call in the economic jargon that China specifically focused when we are looking at the ecosystem of the economic diplomacy. They are practicing the Goldilocks economy. And when I say the Goldilocks economy, it is basically that not going for very high growth rates, not going for very low growth rates, but a middle ground, but which actually translates into a tangible development fruit for the citizens. In terms of the trade, that one thing we saw that even when the countries were when the world opened, it actually started the biggest RTA, RCEP, the Regional Economic Comprehensive Program, in which for the first time it was Korea, China, all these ASEAN countries that got together, and that has a remarkable impact in terms of the global trade. My last point would be, yes, now as we step in the middle of 2024, there are certain challenges. And I will talk about one important challenge is that China being the leader in terms of, as we have seen, how it has been a perfect negotiator, bringing peace between Iran and in the Middle East. What is important that this time China is going to be on the table in Paris Club and doing the debt renegotiations. Now, this time it is not the debtor, it is basically the creditor. And now countries are looking towards China, how the decision will be made, how these debt engagements are going to be made. And that would be a little bit of a challenge when countries see that how they are going to be treated with specifically, I'm talking about China. Yes, it has initiated two big banks. Number one is the National Development Bank, NDB, and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which sometimes is the amount of money that they have raised, that it is a kind of a replica of IMF. So the way it is pushing forward the agenda of global governance, global peace, I think they are the champions in economic diplomacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a very useful intervention in understanding China's overall economic strategy and important lessons for that, but also global challenges. I think the next speaker, a very known voice in China and abroad as well, especially in understanding investments and the tangible, what we call the tangible cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative, is Professor Dr. John Gong of University of International Business and Economics in Beijing. And really, Professor John, I mean, based on also Dr. Anil Salman's intervention and the previous two, the concept that the idea that we're trying to reach at eventually is to see, despite the global challenges, I mean, we have different scenarios where you have certain countries that have alternatives to the BRI. You also have important progress. There's good perceptions about BRI, but specifically when it comes to, you know, the China-Pakistan economic corridor, it is clear that despite the fact we've seen achievements and progress, we need to be proactively attracting Chinese investment in Pakistan. You know, how can we truly achieve that in order to utilize the existing infrastructure? You have done a lot of research on other parts of the world, other continents where these investments have been successful. You've also looked at how BRI investments have stimulated regional connectivity and growth, right? So from your perspective, you know, if you can talk about, number one, how can Pakistan create a conducive environment to promote phase two by attracting investments? And really, what do you expect the future is for CPEC, given where we stand today? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue. I really appreciate it. Now, let me first make a statement. As a friend of the great state of Pakistan, I'm not coming here to sing the hymn. I'm going to be playing the devil's advocate and ask some very tough questions here. Let's talk about the CPEC. It has been spending $62 billion, according to official statistics. That's a lot of money in the context of the size of the Pakistani economy. Even though we call it the China-Pakistan economic corridor, just the important word corridor, I think we have to really ask this question about what really CPEC is. It is just, you know, more of a domestic Pakistani infrastructure project, or mostly a corridor connecting China and Pakistan. And you know, somebody earlier talked about the strategic and geopolitical implications of that. Now, to be honest with you, I'm on the side of the former. I think this is mostly a domestic Pakistani infrastructure project. And there's a component of connecting the western part of China, which is from an economic and population perspective, a very small portion of the total China's economy. So I think, you know, the role of connectivity, you know, in my view, shouldn't be too much overplayed. Even though I acknowledge the strategic and geostrategic implication of that. Now, having said that, if it's a domestic infrastructure project, you know, it's a lot of money. We've spent tons of money on building highways. There's some talk about railway extensions to China, and even some talk about a pipeline, which I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, and also some power plants and that great port in Gwadar in the south of Pakistan. But I think, you know, people tend to miss a very important ingredient, the entire CPEC project. That is regarding the special economic zones. I think this says volume about what is the vision, even from China's perspective, as well as Pakistani perspective, what CPEC should really look like in the future. And you know, I think this is concept about the second phase of CPEC is really about, you know, having some manufacturing operations in these special economic zones as part of the industrialization process in Pakistan. If you read the joint statement just a few days ago when Prime Minister Sharif visited China, it mentions the word industrialization of Pakistan. So, you know, this is supposed to happen. So, you know, we then come to a very tough question. I'm going to ask why it's not happening, or at least it's not happening as fast as we like to see and like to desire. and this is a particularly important issue in my view, in the context of the competition between Pakistan and India. Victor talked about the importance of this competition. You lag behind for a few months or few years, you will lag behind forever. And this is a experience we actually experienced in China vis-a-vis Japan towards the end of the 19th century. Kenneth Pamaras talk about the great divergence between Europe and Asia. And within Asia, there's also so-called a little divergence, which is essentially between China and Japan. And China was lagging behind Japan in terms of textile development, modernized, industrialized textile development just for a few years. And there is entirely different economic path for the two countries, which have profound economic and political implications for decades to come for both countries, China and Japan. So I think this is a very important question here. Now, the question about the issue about investment in India is a foregone conclusion in my view, to be very honest with you. The international community or the Western press talking about what is the next China, it's India. Investments pouring into India, right? India's economic development GDP growth is over 8% for the first quarter of this year. So, China doesn't spend a dime related to BRI in India, but even Chinese companies are investing in big amount in India. So, I'm asking this very tough question: why is the case that Chinese companies are not going to India? Why Western companies are not going to India? As we all understand that foreign direct investment is very, very important. And as a result of that, the exports-led growth model has been invariably the answer for economic success for many East Asian countries, including China, including Japan, including South Korea, and a whole list of countries. They follow this model. If Pakistan is to follow up with a so-called Chinese development model, this is the most important piece in my view. So we have to come back to this very important question that why, after so much money has been spent, $62 billion in building a great infrastructure, but the special economic zones are not growing as fast as we like to see. And I think looking back, I think a big question is really the political environment. We can also talk about the business environment in Pakistan. I think predominantly it's the political environment in Pakistan. We have to be very honest here. Last year, 2023, there are hundreds of terrorist attacks in Pakistan, resulting in a casualty of over 1,000 people. 1,000 people, 500 civilians, 500 security force people. And that's not very good news for investors. And I think it scares hell out of the investors, even from China. I mean, these news were spreading here in China, and I can tell you, you talk to business people, this is a killer in my view. People will be hesitant to invest in an environment like this. And this is actually, in my view, quite disappointing and quite sad to see this not happening. This is happening at a time when the Chinese domestic market is seeing rising labor costs, the time when these lower-end, labor-intensive manufacturing operations are finding increasingly difficult in China, and they're finding ways to go out, these companies. And given Pakistan's connection to the Islamic world, to the Middle East, to these quite wealthy Gulf states, close connection to these countries, why can't Chinese investments go to Pakistan with the goal of targeting these markets in the Middle East? As a matter of fact, again, I want to refer to the joint statement just released a few days ago between Pakistani government and Chinese government. It specifically mentions that Chinese government will help Pakistan to find and to drive Chinese companies to go to invest in Pakistan. This is from the government's action, right? So I think this speaks volume about the importance of foreign direct investment, not just from China, but from around the world, even including Western companies, including Gulf companies, companies from the Arab world in the Middle East. And in addition to this, state actions, I think fundamentally we need a stable political environment, a fair and open business environment, so that it be appealing to foreign direct investment. would be appealing to those companies. Especially, I would mention, Chinese companies as well as Arab capitals from GCC member countries. So I think, this is most important message that I want to deliver to this crowd, because I see so many people from Pakistan attending this conference, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of this competition between Pakistan and India. This is really a dire issue, in my view. The bottom line, I want to emphasize this again. The bottom line is that Pakistan is different to China. I mean, China has tons of these Belt and Road initiatives around the world. These are mostly, I would say, infrastructure projects. They build an airport, they build a railway, they build something, power plants, and they walk away and collect some money, make a loan. That's great for your side. That's great for our side. But Pakistan is different. We are expecting more to follow after that. We're expecting industrialization in Pakistan. We're expecting these, 4 or 5 special economic zones to be filled with operations of manufacturing, operations that export tons of stuff out of Pakistan, so that Pakistan's balance of payments problem, foreign exchange problem, can be eventually resolved. I mean, just by domestic economic development or inward the development model to pay off this $62 billion loan denominated mostly in dollar, it's going to be a very tough business. It has to be followed by a manufacturing boom to resolve these issues. So with that, I think it places tremendous challenge on both China and Pakistan to resolve these challenges that are being alluded to, and jointly work together to find a solution, so that at least Pakistan has a hope of catching up with India in that regard. With that said, I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor John Gong. We have very few minutes for Q&A, and I know that Professor John will be maybe exiting soon for another commitment. So perhaps we have a couple of questions already, but my first question, if it can be for Professor John Gong, since your intervention was also quite short, if you can briefly talk about, I mean, one thing we understand that, yes, the current economic challenges need to be addressed. Industrialization, the expectations are quite different, right? We are also talking about technical vocational education. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of IT professionals being skilled, trained by Huawei, etc. And the document that's come out, the expectation is that this is a holistic, a solution to Pakistan's development and aspirations. So my question for you is, we observed closely the Prime Minister's visit. It was a 5-day long visit. There was a business forum as well. He went to Xi'an as well. There was a conversation about agriculture cooperation. There was a friendship forum as well. 100 businessmen came with the Prime Minister. Can you analyze, I mean, what else, maybe some points that what can, on a government level and on a business level, Pakistan do to change, to really expedite the progress that we hope to see?
Yeah, I fully understand. Pakistan is a large country. It's also a diverse country. I mean, there are areas in Pakistan that are very safe, right? So I think, from that perspective, I would strongly recommend the Pakistani government or the embassy here, do a more proactive job in, try to change the narrative. Right now, my view is that when it comes to investment in Pakistan, people just, wave their hands with a sort of a broad-washing view that, it's not safe. We don't know what's happening. There are these attacks over there. But I think, there got to be changed this narrative. That has to be the change of narrative. The public relations work has to be targeted, laser-focused, targeted at those these impact-making players, targeting those people who make a difference. I would strongly recommend go to the relevant business communities, talk to the executives, to tell them what measures have been taken to protect these investment interests. Where are these special economic zones are located? How close to the city centers? How close to the port facilities? They are relatively, insulated from these kind of attacks. I think we need to do a better job of that kind to convince the business executives to make sure that they will not be so much influenced and sort of brainwashed by this very bad narrative, in my view. It has to change. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And also, I would say, go to the provinces, go to the, city governments, talk to people, talk to the business communities, that are thinking about moving their operations outside of China. There are tons of companies like that. They're facing, increasing pressure, rising costs, all kinds of costs, labor costs included, and they will be looking for places to invest. In my view, you can go to say Sri Lanka. Why can't I go to Pakistan, right? I mean, tell them the story about Pakistan. The people are working very hard. The cost is very low. We've already built a great infrastructure there. Its proximity to the Arab world, to the Muslim world. The transportation easiness, same similar culture, the vast market available in Pakistan. 250 million people, it's very large. I mean, it's comparable to Indonesia. Chinese companies go to Indonesia. Why cannot they go to Pakistan, right? So, I think these are very concrete work that has to be done by people from Pakistan in China to target these business community people.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a perfect response. And I think especially for our viewers who also ask this question, what is the targeted effort that Pakistan can make to expedite special economic zones? It's really about targeting the business communities and being proactive about it, chambers of commerce, doing the right PR. So thank you so much, Professor John Gong, for your expertise, really global expertise that we can benefit from on this very panel. My next question also from the audience will be for Professor Wang Saixiao. So you mentioned, Africa's example and how under the FOCAC framework, especially, we have socioeconomic development. It is expanded as a framework to really include the SDG aspirations of the continent. So can you give some advice or feedback how Pakistan and China's cooperation under CPEC can have a positive impact on the local communities?
I just noticed the question. It's a very interesting one, and yes, for example, in the early days of the Chinese its own domestic building of these energy projects, it encountered, for example, in the 80s, 90s, when the people's awareness of the environmental protection is not that high as nowadays, and we really encounter a lot of the pollution problems and cost from the coal mining and coal burning energy plants. But right now, I think is with our awareness in the industry, I know some friends in the industry that they say right now the Chinese coal power plants is really in the cutting edge technologies. It uses a lot of coal clean and efficient technologies to reduce the pollution. So right now it has cuts the pollution to the minimum. But right now China has stopped. I think it stopped the investment in overseas coal power plants. But for the other power plants like the hydro project, I think there was a very good example. It's called the Carrot Hydro Power Plant project. It's in the Pakistani side. So we just opened the biodiversity management plan. So it established during the implementation process to protect aquatic life and wildlife, and with strict measures were taken to protect the water quality of the rivers around the project site. It used the very modern hydro power plant to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions by 3.5 million tons. The project provides more than 3.2 billion kilowatt hours of clean energy to Pakistan every year, and ensures the power supply to over 5 million people and provides 4,500 decent jobs annually. I think the Carrot hydropower project is just one of the example in how to reduce the pollution from the coal mining project, and to teach the people about the importance of the biodiversity and how the project can benefit the local residents. I think this is the area that in the future, I think the two sides, the civil societies and other like the universities could join together to in doing more research about its environmental impact, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. I think yes, we really saw this direction expedited a lot by Chinese stakeholders by having joint conferences and conversations 2016-17 onwards on the environment and sustainability aspect. So seeing results of that, as you explained, is also very promising. The next question is for Dr. Anil Salman, this is from our audience, which is about how some constraints, economic constraints and infrastructure challenges and funding constraints, logistical issues, how are they posing as obstacles for the sustainable progress of CPEC? So this is one question, and I'll also add another question to this. How do you think, I mean, the aspect that Professor John Kong addressed, how can Pakistan attract Chinese investors who have other global markets to potentially relocate their industries investment to? What do you think? In addition to that, from your perspective as a Pakistani, what can be the right policies or right approach to attract Chinese and other international investments in the special economic zones? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Zoon, for the question. Responding to the first part, I think the best strategy, no matter, CPEC is not a small project, it's a mega project. And obviously, there are constraints, there are challenges, because we don't have any precedent that such projects have been done earlier from which one can learn some lessons. So it is one of the challenges, but with reference to the progress that we have made in the last 10 years, I think much more has to be done. And that much more is basically looking into the returns to investment. And that also corresponds to the second question, that what kind of attractiveness or what kind of incentive framework has to be developed for China and other countries to bring investment. I think one of the strong interventions that has been made is the creation of SIFC over here. And basically, it's a G2G, but it has been remarkable in terms of attracting investment in Pakistan. Number two is that when you are trying to attract the investor, there has to be a sustainability and stability in the public policy. And when I say public policy, it includes the fiscal, the monetary, the trade. So when a businessman is coming or it's investing in any country, it is actually looking for a long-term perspective, that I'm saying like 3-4 decades. And if there is always a change in the policies, like the tariff structure is changing or the tax structure is changing, that hurts the investor. So the investor is always looking out for the stability. But Alhamdulillah, with the elections, the government is here. I foresee a stability, and we can see it in terms of the recent visit of our premier, and the 30+ MOUs have been signed in the areas which are much needed. Pakistan is also in the process of the first artificial intelligence and agriculture, climate change. So when we have a common theme, when we have a common ground, it attracts the investor. Number two, that you need to have dialogue with them. You need to understand that what are the problems or what are the needs of the foreign investor when we have to attract in Pakistan. Pakistan has a very liberal investment policy where we talk about that everything but arms. We bring investors over here. The ease of doing business ranking has improved over here. And above all, there is now stability. You can see the stock market. It has been to 75,000 points, and there is a projection that it may reach by the end of year to 100,000, which is remarkable in terms of improving the business investors, both domestic and foreign investors' confidence. So Cutting, bringing the pointers like number one, that you need to have more interactions. Number two, you have to build the confidence of the investors by more interactions and moving from G to G to B to B and P to P. And lastly, that you need to create an incentive structure that is very much what we are doing in terms of SEZs, that to make the investor comfortable that, okay, Pakistan is a better parking place for investment as compared to any other countries.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll also add to this, those were excellent points. I mean, we can have the right policies in place. The Special Investment Facilitation Council, SIFC, proposed by the current government is an example as a one-stop shop, a one-door solution, really, to encourage and, of course, proactively reaching out to chambers, addressing the existing concerns they have can also play a role. The last question is for the panel, but I would like to address it actually to Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, since this also aligns very closely with his intervention. So the question is, I mean, how can China and Pakistan enhance bilateral cooperation on emerging technologies, especially, artificial intelligence, also mentioned by Victor Gao, to foster innovation, improve economic development, and also address mutual security concerns? We know that this is an important topic mentioned, digitalization, e-governance, all of that is also mentioned during the Prime Minister's visit. So how do you think we can deepen our cooperation in these emerging technologies? And the question also, I mean, from our audience talks about any potential implications of cooperating with China in such aspects and technology transfer with China. Are there any potential geopolitical implications in your opinion, please?
As I understand, your question is about
cooperation on AI. Please, please.
Yeah, there's tremendous scope for cooperation. As you know, Pakistan has a very thriving and very robust IT emerging market, and Pakistan, in fact, is competing with the rest of the world in creating an infrastructure by way of outsourcing. I mean, most of the foreign outsourcing IT setups, they leverage Pakistani expertise, and there are software houses here which have already started tapping into the semiconductor market, because as I understand, the future belongs to this chips and the semiconductors manufacture. This is going to emerge as an area of critical technology that Pakistan and China both can collaborate in, making use of the Pakistani capability, our software expertise, a very large pool of young cohort of population which is coming up, and the labor cost would also be quite cheap compared to the rest of the world, when the competitive market is getting more competitive because of the high tariffs and the US de-risking strategies, wherein the United States is imposing all kinds of restrictions and tariffs on exports to China, and especially about the semiconductors. So this is a field in which I think the SEZs can come in very handy, because these 4 SEZs, they are being developed and they are into development stage, and other SEZs are also coming up. So we need to create infrastructure wherein the right business environment and the infrastructure is there, so that you can leverage the cheap labor of Pakistan and the expertise of our IT experts to create those hubs where we can manufacture semiconductors and possibly export and tap the export market. So I think therein lies a great scope. But when we speak of SEZs, we should be mindful of few realities also, and those realities are that we definitely need to develop the human capital to a certain level on which we can be globally competitive. The potential is there. Our IT industries are producing the best IT graduates, and they are being connected with the industry. So industry academia linkage, which was earlier not that strong, is being strengthened with a peculiar focus on this Chinese collaboration, so that whenever this IT hub is established in one of the SEZs, especially manufacture of semiconductors and chips, therein Pakistan can provide the enabling environment, infrastructure, and the right human capital. Then the right business environment. I mean, the regulatory checks, one-stop windows, and the right confidence for the business community that whosoever comes would earn the right return on their investments. I think that is the next step. And then rural-urban connectivity part, that is being improved because SEZs are well served with the main roads, but still, if we have to leverage other things and we need to improve the connectivity, business environment, regulatory environment, and development of human capital. So potentialities are tremendous. And I think this is going to be a very important aspect once we view the future chip wars that the world is going to fight, and there's going to be more competition over who produces what and at what cost. So I think Pakistan, because of its port advantage, we can export, making use of this transportation and become part of the resilient supply chain infrastructure the world over. Because Americans are trying, they have coined this euphemism. They call de-risking as supply chain resilience. So I think Pakistan, China can also coin this term that we can also enhance our own supply chain resilience by creating our IT infrastructures, transportation hubs, and export mechanisms.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rashid Janjua. And with that, we can't conclude this panel because there's just so much we have touched upon, with four leading experts on the relationship on both sides, understanding the geopolitical scenario, of course, that is relevant, but also, the economic aspects, what can be done to expedite phase 2, which is really what the Prime Minister's visit was about. So we wrap up the panel for now. Due to essentially paucity of time, the conversation can go on. And now for concluding remarks, let me firstly warmly welcome Mr. Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization. Are you with us? Is Mr. Victor Gao with us right now? He was here a moment ago, so I'm not sure. So maybe first we can invite Ambassador Dr. Raza Muhammad of Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoom Khan. I'm highly impressed with the conduct, the way you have managed, and also very impressed with the talks or speeches made by the speakers. I think everyone spoke very well in a way that it was all meat, all very important points. And so were the questions and answers, and very good answers and candid questions too. Belt and Road Initiative, despite opposition, is thriving. That is a good thing, which we can say. 150 countries, there were 151, and perhaps Italy has decided to leave. 150 countries are partners in the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's 5.1 billion people of the world, GDP of 4.1 trillion, and the countries of BRI are having mutual trade of 2.8 trillion. So this is a good news that despite all the opposition, these are the latest figure which I just got from the internet. When it comes to the security when it comes to the investment, it is very important that investor looks for 2-3 things. Number one, that it's his or her investment is protected, is secure. They will be able to earn profit and take it back home, and also security of their people. I think this is one thing in which Pakistan needs to improve. Very candidly, I would admit that last few years, 5 to 6 attacks on our Chinese brothers and sisters, which have resulted into the fatalities, is a source of worry and embarrassment for both the countries, and especially for Pakistan. And Prime Minister of Pakistan has especially taken it upon him to ensure that this does not happen. We will try, Pakistan will try its best. And same goes for the environment, which should be friendly for the investment and repatriation. Internal stability, I think, was one of the very important points mentioned, and continuity of the policy. And I think learning from the Chinese governance system is the best thing which one can do. I'm very fond of it. Uh, Whether you know it or no, my PhD is on Belt and Road Initiative and CPEC. So when I did my PhD on CPEC, I studied China a lot. I studied history, I studied culture, I studied its way of conduct of relations with the other states as a civilizational state. China is very, very different from United States of America in its approach towards the international relations. Chinese history says that it has never annexed any territory, it has never invaded any country, and even during the Silk Road times when it thrived, the relationships were based on the mutual consent, win-win cooperation, and giving trade concessions and gifts and so on and so forth. So no colonies, no territories annexed. Contrary to this, the American approach has been and is still very, very different. America mainly relies on the muscles, on the military potential, on the power potential. The military power potential, not the people, not the economy, as China relies on the economic cooperation. You see, after 9/11, post 9/11, when America was busy fighting wars, spending trillions, killing millions, China was very quietly making inroads on the vehicle of economy, win-win cooperation. That is, 151 countries are there in Belt and Road Initiative. So that is what makes China different than United States. And I think in the longer run, China is going to succeed. And I said earlier, there has been some overture, some re-engagement from the United States side as well. Realization that engagement, continued engagement, and perhaps cooperation would be better for both the countries and the people of the world. If Chinese economy is hurt, and if trade war escalates, it is not going to hurt China alone. It is going to hurt the United States and the world economic system as well. When it comes to business with Pakistan, I think enough has been said on this. The recent visit was basically to improve business-to-business contacts and stress upon economy, agriculture, mm, fisheries, offshore drilling, and minerals have been added to the CPEC. So it is not CPEC just alone. It is CPEC plus and plus and plus. Right. Some scholarships have been given for AI, some scholarships have given for the uh, agriculture also. But more importantly, I think I would like to speak a few words on the development of special economic zones. I think China doesn't have anything to do with it. It is our thing, our fault, I would say. We are slow in developing the special economic zone, making them in amply hospitable, amply attractive for getting the investment from abroad, and especially for shifting of the Chinese industry, which is called the sunset industry, which we were waiting for. And I hope that we are in a position to develop all these economic zones, which are 9 now, and 3 of them are at the priority. CPEC significance. I think, as I said earlier, I am a PhD on it. CPEC is very, very significant for China. CPEC is very, very significant for Belt and Road Initiative and Pakistan as well. It is actually very, very beneficial for both the countries and people of both the countries. At the same time, when it comes to the strategic aspects, it is a connector of SCRB and MSRI. So China, if you see the map, And if you plant the CPEC on it in a different color, you will see the whole Belt and Road Initiative, whole of the MSRI are connected through Gwadar. And last but not the least, if it comes to the Chinese physical containment through Malacca and through South China Sea. So Gwadar and CPEC are the answers to the Malacca dilemma. So from that point of view, it is very, very important. It can become an energy corridor as well. Last point is, yes, one more point about the greening of the BRI. I think there is a special ministry which has been created by China, greening of the Belt and Road Initiative. All those who don't know, I think they must know it. China is taking special care of it. As far as the coal-fired power projects in Pakistan are concerned, Dr. Wong was very right to say that they are using supercritical technology, which is very much environment friendly. Last point is about this phase 2 and socio-economic benefits of the CPEC. I think it has great potential for Pakistan and for both the countries, but especially for Pakistan, for lifting people out of poverty, as it was said. More importantly, I always suggested that for security of CPEC, it is very, very important that the locals of the area are made partners in the CPEC projects. Inclusivity brings security. If they are part of the gains, if they are part of the CPEC projects, if they are gaining from there, if they are earning bread and butter from there, why would they attack it? They would rather protect it. With this, once again, thank you to all. Thank you, Ms. Zone. Thank you, Mr. Victor. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Thank you, Mr. John, and everyone here, and Rashid and Salman. Thank you so much, Zone. Back to you.
Thank
Grateful.
you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed. I think especially, obviously, this was the perfect synopsis in a way, making sense of what we are here to deepen our understanding about. And inclusivity brings security. That's very important. Ownership, feeling connected with the projects, how close they are to ordinary people. This is something I also experienced when I went to Gwadar, the degree to which they feel they're part of the investment, they take ownership, and that's going to be eventually the real strength. And I think that's where good governance really comes into the picture, which is something that China has done a lot for. So we have a lot to learn from each other, and we have a lot to move forward towards. So with that, let's warmly welcome.
I
Please,
just want
please.
a request. When you write the post-event report, let's
Yes.
share it with each other. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say we can write two versions. We can also think of co-authoring it. So that would be fantastic. Thank you for the suggestion. Now let's warmly welcome for concluding remarks, Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, please.
Thank you very much, Zoon. Thank you, all the Pakistani brothers and sisters, and also the Chinese colleagues here. And I listened very carefully to the wonderful remarks. There are so many things to talk about, and time is so short, and the tasks we are faced with are so multiple. So I think we really need to get onto the same page to get CPEC done, to put more flesh and blood onto this wonderful architecture and overarching structure to accelerate the growth in Pakistan and in China. But also allow me to mention that while CPEC going through Pakistan and going into Kashgar in Xinjiang in China, Kashgar, China just announced that this China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway project is going to start very soon. And it starts in Kashgar, going north for about less than 200 meters to the border with Kyrgyzstan, and then going west to Uzbekistan. Now, this will be another corridor. I mentioned this just to emphasize the need of acting and moving forward in great urgency, because there are other projects going on, and CPEC is, as I mentioned, the largest connection project within the whole family of BRI project, and we really need to get it done to the mutual satisfaction of Pakistan, and China. Now, the other thing is that panelists mentioned the security issue. Indeed, in China, if you are an ordinary citizen or a business owner or a state-owned enterprise leader, for example, when you hear about these tragic killing of the Chinese nationals in Pakistan, everyone shivered and everyone felt saddened about it. And everyone thought that both China and Pakistan really need to do something to prevent this from happening. And I would say that maybe China and Pakistan and other members of the SCO need to really get to the bottom of this and come up with an overarching framework to deal with the root causes of these terrorist attacks. I suspect many of these terrorist attacks have cross-border factors to it. For example, sometimes they're based in Afghanistan or other countries, then they infiltrate into Pakistan, and sometimes they have other influences behind them, and they single out the Chinese nationals with a particular purpose. And I think we need to be more targeted against these terrorist attacks to make sure that no civilian people will be killed, either on the Chinese side, or on the Pakistani side, or from whichever country they come from. This is a very important thing. And I would say this is part of what I've emphasized, that is to maintain stability at home, dealing with these terrorist attacks. Now, allow me to mention, after listening to all the suggestions and points made by the other panelists, allow me to say that in addition to whatever we talked about, I want to make a suggestion. Maybe China and Pakistan can really zoom in on this EV, electric vehicle. You know, China, as of 2023, became the largest exporter of automobiles of all kinds. Then China was the biggest exporter of EV cars. China produced more than 30 million cars, the first and the largest amount of car produced by any country in human history, 30 million cars and plus. So I think maybe China and Pakistan can really get our ass together to make sure that some of these cars are produced in Pakistan, especially EV cars. And the target market would not only be in Pakistan, but also in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, for example. And I think if we can really get one of these big item projects going, it will really contribute a lot to creating more meaningful jobs in Pakistan. The difficulties are there, but we need to have a lot of wisdom and courage and vision to make sure that when the CPEC is more or less done and to be further improved, we need to put more flesh and blood onto this infrastructure. Now, the other thing, allow me to mention, and I haven't consulted with my colleagues in China, I think the military equipment and airplane cooperation between China and Pakistan is actually a very good project so far. I would add that maybe we can consider increase that of cooperation to produce, for example, ammunitions or drones or other military vehicles, not only for Pakistan, but for other countries in the Middle East, in other parts of the world. And they qualify for legally allowed military equipment export. Now, I mention this because this kind of military equipment export is a big item. It can earn a lot of money. And I think China has a very vast resources and technological breakthroughs in this particular area, especially drones of all kinds. And if we can single out on this cooperation to build upon the good track record that China and Pakistan already built over the decades in producing our fighter planes and other military cooperation, why couldn't we also add another big item cooperation to China-Pakistani friendship and cooperation, so that eventually, I hope, Pakistan, interestingly enough, can be a major exporter of these conventional weapons based on cooperation between Pakistan and China, with the targeted market in Pakistan, but also in Central Asia, but also, more importantly, in the Middle East and beyond in the Muslim world. Now, I think we need to use a lot of wisdom to think about what else we can do to make sure that our Pakistani friends and brothers and sisters are fully integrated and engaged with the progress and the breakthroughs that China is making and will continue to make. Many people talked about the Indian Pacific Economic Framework. Allow me to add one point. I actually wrote an article about this. This IPEF in the United States does not have any congressional approval, meaning it does not have any bread and butter to hand out to the participating countries. And it's more or less like a framework. And I think we really need to focus on what matters. What is the beef? Where is the beef? Where is the bread? And how to make sure that people in Pakistan can really benefit from huge mega projects like this CPEC. And through our creativity and wisdom, we can really line up more interesting, high-paying jobs and major projects for Pakistan going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Professor Suzhou University and Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, Victor Gao. With that, really, the conversation will continue. We have to conclude this panel. I'll quickly make a brief remark that these latest suggestions by Mr. Victor Gao are very important because they can help us understand how can we, because essentially we are trying to improve our balance of trade. Essentially, we are trying to become better exporters. And I think the Hingor cooperation on submarines, in which 4 out of 8 are to be manufactured in Pakistan, is an example of a starting point of what you have just suggested. Also, EVs are an excellent way forward as well, because again, this is a high value addition product manufacturing. So we maybe, apart from targeted efforts to improve the likelihood of chambers to invest, to guide Chinese investors to come into Pakistan, and also thinking about more inclusive approaches to ensure impact on local communities. We should also think about what are the best, most industries that will give back the most in the shortest period. So we have considered a lot of options, of a lot of ways forward for China and Pakistan to strengthen the economic cooperation, business-to-business collaborations, and the already very important relationship under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. With that, once again, as CCG, it's a pleasure for us to cooperate with the very prestigious Islamabad Policy Research Institute. And again, thank you very much to our panelists, Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, Dr. Salman, Dr. Wang Sai Shao, and Professor John Gong, and also Ambassador Raza Mohammed and Mr. Victor Gao. With that, we conclude. Thank you to our audience for participating, and this will be hopefully resulting in some policy recommendations, suggestions, better insight into CPEC, and also more conversations in the future. With that, I, Zoon Ahmed Khan, Research Fellow at CCG, sign off. Thank you very much.